you're watching this video, you've probably just been an assignment from your teacher to record a video report for your class. The purpose of this video is to orient you to the new video editing workstation and software here at Tri-Valley High School. Before we get started, we've got a couple of ground rules we need to go over. Rule number one is that we don't want to put any audio or video on any of the network drives on the computer servers. The reason for that's twofold, because number one, the network does not have the capacity to hold files that size. Number two is because the editing system, in order to do anything with those, has to have faster access than what we can get from the network. Instead, you'll be creating a folder on the D drive of this machine and storing your files on there. Rule number two is that you are not to use any copyrighted materials on this computer, which means that you cannot import any music or MP3 files. Anyone found doing so will lose their privileges to have access to this machine. Okay, now that we've done the introductory part of this video, it's time to show you how to import some video into the machine to get started on it. We're using a flip camera this morning, which is similar to the ones that you would be using in your classes. And we're going to stop that and release it from the tripod here so that we can import it. These cameras will hold about an hour's worth of footage. There's a couple of different versions of them. One of them is standard definition, one of them is high definition. When you go to check them out, you can look at the tags and tell which one is which. And if you can get a high def one, that would be probably preferable. If you can't, a standard definition you can still be used for most of the stuff that you're doing around here project-wise, since most of our equipment around here is not set up for high definition at this time. Okay, we've got our footage. What I'm going to do now is import that into the computer. There is a flip-out USB port on the side of these little flip cameras, and there is a short extension cable that is included with the camera bag. And what we're going to do is, on the top of the Dell computer here, there are USB ports, and there's a tray there that is perfect for setting these cameras in while you're working with them to import them. So we're going to put the camera there, and we're going to plug the camera into the USB port. And when we do that, the camera will appear on the computer as if it was another hard drive. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the folders here, or open the folder on the camera, and the camera stores its footage in the DCIM folder under the 100 video folder. So there's our two videos that we shot this morning with the flip cam. And the next step is we're going to go to computer and go to the D drive, which is labeled video projects. Now what you're going to do is you're going to create a folder here with your team's names on it. In this particular case, I'm going to call this one Administrator 2, as I have another project on here also. You're going to keep all of your files for your project in that folder. And we're going back to the camera and just going to highlight those and do a cut and paste, just like you would with any other project. Now in the case of this particular project that I'm working on here, which is your introductory video, because of the fact I'm using two different cameras, I'm going to probably create some folders within this one and separate the two footage types out, just to make it easier to keep track of which thing came from which camera. Alright, we're back on again, and we've imported the camera footage from the flip camera. We created a flip camera folder and put the footage that we imported from that into the flip folder. We created another folder here for the other camera that we're currently using and imported the footage from that into this folder. So we have it here ready to use in our project. Now, projects on this system, it's a three-step process. There are three programs involved primarily. The first one is going to be Adobe Premiere, which is used for editing, and you use that to go in and create your projects. Once you've got everything the way you want it in that, then it's exported from there into a program called Adobe Media Encoder that actually builds the video based on the instructions that you've given it with Adobe Premiere. And then the final step is a program called Adobe Encore, which is used to create a DVD or a Blu-ray disc, depending on which type of disc you're wanting, or if you're even wanting a disc. In some cases you may want to render it out as a Windows media file instead to be played on the computer. So we're going to go in and go into Adobe Premiere first, which is where we're going to do our editing. And we're going to tell it that we're going to do a new project. Now we're going to set up our settings on here. We're going to use the D drive, but we're not wanting to use that folder that was used the last time it had a file done. We'll go back up to Video Projects, and here is our folder that we were using. We're going to click on it. We're going to use that folder for scratch disks. We're going to check that setting, and it's using the kind of the generic shared default location, so that's okay. And we're going to name our project, and this will be the orientation. Okay. Now it wants to know what type of video we want to do this project in. And there are a lot of different settings here. We're going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see it a little better. But you have various video modes that you can use here. Most of our footage is in high definition. We're going to create this in AVC HD. And we're going to come down here to 1080i, which is the standard high definition format. And in this case, we're going to use a 30 frame per second setting, which is not entirely accurate. The actual 30 frames per second stems from the old black and white TV days, and when they came up with the color television standard, it changed the timing on things a little bit, and it's now actually 29.97 frames. So that's a little bit confusing. You'll see the two terms used almost interchangeably, but technically it's 29.97. So you'll see that in both places, but I just want to point that out so it's not real confusing. So we're going to pick the AVC HD 1080i 30, which is their roughly 30 frames a second. And you pick that based on what most of your footage is that you're importing into the system. Alright, this brings up our menu, or our work area basically. Let me back up here just a little bit and show you a little more of that on the screen so I can give you a quick tour of it. You have up in this corner up in here, we have a monitor that is going to allow us to view most of our footage as we're working with it. We have the timeline down here, which is where you're going to put your various tracks in and do your editing at. Over here on the far right corner of the screen, we have a group of tools that we can go into for various things. The one you'll be using the most is going to be the arrow tool, which is here, or the razor blade here, which is used for cutting pieces of film off. When you're working with stuff in Adobe Premiere, the analogy is like you're working with pieces of film. So you have a razor blade for cutting your film and then an arrow for just moving things around basically. Up in here is where we have the clips that we would be working with, and once we import stuff it'll show up here on this menu. And then down here at the bottom in this corner we have a variety of various audio effects, video transitions, and so on, and we'll see how to use that here in just a little bit. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to come up here to the menu and we're going to import our footage. I can go import, and in this case it's opening right up to where we told it the file is going to be in terms of the project. So we're going to import our flip camera footage, and you can do an import folder, and when you do that it will group all that stuff together in kind of a virtual folder here so that all your clips are right there, easy to work with. Now we're going to import the other camera footage. AVC HD import folder. Okay, that gets us our footage that we shot imported into the system. And what you'll notice down here in the lower right corner of your screen is the system is conforming the files. It goes through and basically kind of scans the files and figures out what the proper levels are for everything and so on, and gets them ready to be worked with in the editing system. It also creates kind of miniaturized versions of those to work with in the editing system because it's easier for it to play back and show you that way. So that's going on down here. In the meantime, in addition to using our clips that we shot, I want to be able to do some nice graphics, so I'm going to import another product that we have on this system. I'm going to come down here and go Import on the main menu again, and I'm going to come back up to the Video Projects D drive, and I'm going to import the Digital Juice folder. Digital Juice is a company out of Florida, excuse me, that what they do is they create audio and graphics libraries and sell them that you can purchase and use in your projects, and you have the permissions to use them for whatever you want to do. There's no copyright issues or anything like that. That's what they're designed to be used for, specifically for importing into projects like this. So we're going to import those files, and we've got a couple of things here about some of the stuff in that, and just click OK to get past those. Okay, and we should see the Digital Juice folder. And in this case, because we had the ABC HD folder open, put it into there, which is no big problem. All we have to do is grab it and pull it off to the right, and it moves it up a layer so that it's up at the same level as our other folders. And that'll make it easier for us to keep track of where things are as we start bringing things into this software here. Okay, so what we want to do now is we're going to come up here to that flip folder, and we're going to click on the first file in the list and shift click the second file in the list. I'm going to go ahead and drag them into the timeline. They appear right there. And I'm going to come up here then and do the same thing with our stuff from the other camera. There it's highlighted, and I shift click to highlight the other ones. Drag it down here and drop it into the timeline. Now you'll notice that our timeline, for some reason, the audio for the first camera is in this track. The audio for the second camera is in this one. The reason for that is because the timeline supports different types of audio clips. In the case of the flip camera, it records only in stereo. So it automatically found a matching audio track on here for stereo audio and dropped it into there. In the other camera that we're using right now, it will actually record full 5.1 surround sound. So when I dropped it in there, it didn't have that type of track available in the first three, so it dropped it onto audio 4, which is right here. This is all done automatically. It makes it so that you can manage your audio clips a little bit easier. But that's the reason we're seeing that. Doesn't really make a lot of difference in the project. We'll be able to tweak that audio later on the way we want it to be. Now, one of the first things you've probably noticed is after dropping these clips in there and they appear on the monitor, that this clip does not fill the whole frame of the picture. Now, if I go forward with my timeline through all the video that we were just looking at, this one does fill the whole picture. Now, the reason for that is because these are two different cameras and they shoot at different resolutions. In other words, when we talk about high definition, standard definition, all that kind of stuff, there's actually more than one flavor of high definition. In this case, this camera here shoots at 1920 by 1080, and this one back here shoots at a slightly different resolution. This one is at 1280 by 720. And I can bring up those properties when I click on the clip over here in the list of clips that we just imported stuff into. Okay. So the picture is different on that, but that's very easy to fix. And all we've got to do is go into the source tab up here on the left-hand screen. And I'm going to click on one of those clips. And actually it's the effect controls that I want, not source. Source lets you preview clips. But if I go to effects, it'll bring up a menu of different things I can tweak in the video. And you can do all kinds of interesting things here. But if I go to motion, and there's a scale there, it shows me the position of it, all kinds of different things. But while I'm clicked on it, I can actually come back, I can come up here to the picture, and I can grab the frame just like you would a photo, and I can stretch it. Add still picture. Let's get off of that. Anyway, so we've stretched that out to the regular size. We can come back here to the previous clip, and I can move my timeline back to see what it looks like. That's the original size again. And I can do the same thing. I'm going to grab it, stretch that out to the normal size so that it fills the whole screen. That matches it with the footage from the first camera, and the footage from the second camera matches up pretty nicely that way. Again, the rule of thumb is when you first set up those settings at the beginning, set it to what you have the most footage of, and then match the others to it. So this shows you that you can work with two different types of cameras, two different types of footage, and Premiere doesn't care, it will happily make them all fit. So we've got that step started. So what we want to do is start going through our footage. And I'm going to start out here with the second clip, which is I think the one we're going to end up using. Turn the volume up on Windows just a little bit. This actually took about 3 or 4 takes for this opening sequence. So when you go to shoot yours, don't be surprised. You'll probably take multiple takes before you get it the way you want it to. That's not unusual. And you can also speed up your footage a little bit using the little slider underneath the monitor. It's a spring-loaded thing, so if you let up on the mouse button, it'll jump back to the stop position. This makes it nice if you're searching through a clip trying to find a certain scene. Okay, found a point here where I want to make an edit, so I come over to the toolbar and I pick a razor blade from the toolbar. I come back to my timeline right here, and I make a cut. And it'll show me the first frame in this next cut where I've got it right here. Now I can go over here, and I know I don't want these, so I'm going to go in here and right click, and I'm going to come up here to the ripple delete, which means it's going to delete that clip and it's going to close that space up by moving everything back on the timeline. Boom, just like that. Okay, now this first one I know is all garbage. I'm not going to use any of that. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, so we've got that back to where we want it. And back here on the timeline, let's see what it looks like.
If you're watching this video, you've probably just made an assignment from your teacher or a video report for your class. The purpose of this video is to orient you to the new video editing workstation and software here at Tri-Valley High School. Before we get started, we've got a couple of ground rules we need to go over. Rule number 1 is that we don't want to put any audio or video on any of the network drives.
Okay, this is probably a good place to throw a graphic in, because we're doing a list, so that would be a good thing to put on screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to Digital Juice, which is our pre-made graphics that we can use. And there are 3 different themes there that's indicated by the 3 number sets you'll see. There's a 72, and 82, and what's the other one? 104. Okay. Well, let's look at what we have here for backgrounds. There's one right there, and I can go over here to source, and I can drag a clip in there and see what it looks like if I want to preview it. Now the animations on this will not be as smooth as they will be on the final product because of the way the editing software works. Yeah, it's just to give you a good representation of what it's going to look like. Let's see what number 2 looks like. We'll try it instead. Slightly different one. I can go down to the next theme, which is number 82. I can see what the backgrounds in it looks like. There's that one. Another background there. Four. Let's use that one. We'll drag it down here into the timeline. And I can come down here. There is a bar that shows mountains in the distance and mountains up close to tell you that you can enlarge what you're working with so that you can work with it a little more closely. So we're going to zoom in on this section of it. And go back over here to our actual program that we're working with.
On the computer servers.
And we'll turn it up a little bit and we'll play some more of that.
The reason for that's twofold, because number 1, the network does not have the capacity to hold files that size. Number 2 is because the editing system, in order to do anything with those, has to have faster access than what we can get from the network. Instead, you'll be creating a folder on the D drive of this machine and storing your files on there.
Okay, let's go back and figure out where we started talking about that.
Now, rules we need to go over. Rule number 1.
Okay, so we're going to move our background back here just a little bit. And we're going to come up here into titles, go new title, default still. And it's going to check with us to see if we have that resolution the way we want it. We say yep. And this is our titling tool. It shows us the frame we're currently stopped on so we can get a reference as to what it's going to look like. And down here are several pre-made title configurations for us that we can use. You can also pick one of those and then customize it by changing the colors and so on the way you want to. So let's see what this one looks like. If I click on that one, and now I can come up here and I can click, and maybe I want that a little bit larger, so I'll come over here to the font size and change that from 50 to, let's make it say 75, see what that looks like. Okay, that's a little bit better. And so now we put in our font the way we want it just by typing it in. Okay, we played around with the title a little bit, got the settings the way we wanted as far as font size and font style. Typed the text in there and it's ready to go. So we're done with that, and we'll close the title editing window. And then we come over here to the title, which in this case is being called Title 1. That's the default first title in a project like this. And we're going to drag it down here to the timeline. I'm going to place it right over top where the background is, and then I'm going to stretch on the timeline to make it the same length as the background. So let's see how that fits in with our audio here.
Rule number one is that we don't want to put any audio or video on any of the network drives on the computer servers. The reason for that's twofold, because number one, the network does not have the...
Okay, that works pretty good, but that transition seems a little bit sudden, that quick cut in and out. So I'm going to go over here, and this is something you can do that a lot of people may not realize when they first start playing around with this, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to find a video transition from my menu over here, and I'm going to pick a dissolve. Cross dissolve is the one you use most of the time, so that's the one that's going to show up with a little red line around it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cross dissolve at the very beginning of that title on the background, and a cross dissolve on the title itself. You got to do both of them. And I'm going to do the same thing at the end of it. Now, if I go back here and try this again,
Rule number one is that we don't want to put any audio.
it gives us a nice fade in for the title and the graphic.
On the computer servers. The reason for that's twofold, because number one,
then it gives us a nice fade out at the end of it.
Capacity.
So that's an easy way to do titles on there. You can do the same thing with the lower thirds. You put the lower third on the bottom line bit just above the actual video, and you put the title then just above the lower third. And you can adjust the position of the lower third similar to what we did with adjusting the size of our two clips that were a little bit smaller than our screen size. So that's kind of the basics. You can play around with that. That gives you a good idea of how that works. Okay, we're back up here at the beginning of the movie now. And as you can see, I've gone in and added some additional titles in, basically using the same techniques that we were just looking at as far as our Title 1 that we did earlier. Right now our movie opens up just pretty much with the shot of me sitting there. And I'd like to have something a little more formal in terms of some opening titles and maybe drop some music in there, something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and take a look at our backgrounds. We've got several different ones to pick from here. We've got, there's one. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, that's kind of different. Let's go ahead and use that one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is come up here in the timeline again and grab that video, bring it down here to my timeline, and because I'm wanting to insert this in front of my existing clips, I'm going to hold the control key down. You'll see all the arrows come up indicating that it's going to push anything in that track forward to make room for this one. I'm going to come back here to the very beginning of it and let up on my mouse button. And in this case it dropped it into number 4, but I don't want it there, so I'm going to grab it, drag it down here to number 1. So it is now in the number 1 slot. And the reason it didn't drop it into number 1 is depending on what tracks you highlight up here, it tells it what track you're wanting to change. So we could have done it in one step by unhighlighting all these and just highlighting the number 1 track, and it would know that whatever I was bringing into this thing I was wanting to drop into the first track. So we've now added that in, and I'm going to go ahead and close the preview that I've got up here and go back to my regular program. And there's my animated title at the beginning, my animated background rather at the beginning, and that is going to go into the video.
If you're watching this video, you've probably just...
And I want to go back and I want to do something a little bit fancier with that opening still to kind of clean it out a little bit and fix it up a little bit nicer. So now I think this is a good time to introduce what's called a swipe. And swipes are an animated wipe that comes with the digital juice package, and they're made for making a transition from one frame to another, or one film clip to another. What we're going to do is I'm going to drag it down here into the timeline. And this one I am going to put in track 4. And swipes have a frame someplace within them. Now here we see the swipe coming in. Swipes also have sound effects with them. But if I go back here, there's a frame in the middle that covers everything. And you want to align that with the seam basically between your two videos. We're going to zoom in a little bit closer so we can see more what's going on here. I'm going to drag that back a little bit. That's about where I want it, but I want to nudge it just a little more because I can still see there. I'm going to go a little bit larger so we can really see stuff. And at this scale, you'll notice that on your playback pointer here, it'll actually show you the frames. So we're going to come back a frame, make sure that that transition is where we want it. Looks like it is. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit the play button again.
If you're watching,
and so that gives you that nice animated graphic that kind of wipes over top of whatever your video is, and then your frame transition takes place from one clip to the other, and then it wipes away to reveal clip number 2 afterwards. And it has that nice kind of sound effect there too, to add a little extra pop to it. So we've added that into it. So let's go back here to the beginning again. And I'm going to actually shrink that down a little bit to make it a little easier to work with. And I want to start out with black at the beginning of my clip. So I'm going to come up here under File and under New. You'll see a whole number of things there. I can come down here. I've got bars and tone. If I want to put bars and tone at the beginning, a test pattern on it basically. I have a film style countdown here that I can add to it. And then I have black video. I'm going to get black video and set that to the correct resolution to match the rest of my project. Once again, I'm going to click on it, bring it over here, hold down the control key, and drop that in front of my background. And I'm going to take my razor tool and I'm going to trim a little off the front of the background. When you make a transition in this, remember it's kind of like working with film clips, we talked about that earlier. You have to allow a little bit of what they call head and tail on the footage, which is you're giving up a little bit of that for the special effect to be able to do that wipe or that dissolve or whatever effect you want to do that way. So I'm going to trim a little off of there and come up back here to my black, and I'm going to trim a little off of there. And as you get to playing with this, you'll kind of get a feel for how much it is, but basically I have to trim enough off of there that I can cover the area that's going to be used for the dissolve. And I bring my dissolve over, and you'll notice how it's covering up part of the film. It's telling you that it's got enough footage there to do what it needs to do. I'm going to drop that in there. And then I'm going to come over here to my black, and I'm going to trim that bit off the front there with a ripple delete. Now we have a nice starting in black, and it will fade into my animation. And my animation will run. I can put my opening title on there, and then it'll do a fancy wipe and go into
if you're
this.
watching this video, you've probably
So that's how you can kind of do your titles at the beginning. Then I can come back here and just do another title just like we did before, going new title, going to the title menu, going new title, default still, and I can bring that up and create my title that I want to put in there, whatever font I want to use, and so on. So that's kind of the basic how you put a title into the video. Okay, so we've done our titles and decided to add 2 titles. We needed a couple of titles on the front of this to make it look a little more professional. So we added the first one there, and we go through and do a little dissolve into the second title. And we do our white.
If you're watching this video, you've probably just made an assignment for
Okay. Only thing about it is the fact that that's an awful lot of time that is silent. There's absolutely no sound, so it might be good to have a piece of music to go with that up there at the beginning. Well, this is where our music library comes in. So I'm going to save this for right now. Always make sure you save your projects before you close them out. And I think it's a good time to take a look at what we have available in our music library. So I'm going to close Premiere, and I'm going to open a program here called Juicer. Juicer is a product that is made by Digital Juice. It is basically a database of the products that you have installed on the computer, and it lets you go in, and in this case we're going to take a look at our music and sound effects. Now we have a music library called Music Box that's installed on this machine. So we'll go into that. And as you can see, we have a lot of music to select from. So what I'm going to do, the nice thing about this is over here in the left-hand column there are filters that will let you go in and look at different things and try to find something that kind of fits your project. So you can look at mood, you know, whether you want to be dramatic or emotional or pop music, whatever you want to do that way. You can look at style. There's all kinds of stuff there. Acoustic, ambient, contemporary, anything you want to do that way. And you can look at theme. Whether you're looking for something that sounds kind of broadcasty, for an example. If I go in and say I want to look at something that sounds kind of like a broadcast theme, it gives me 3 suggestions there in terms of some themes. Oh, that's different. Don't know that that's what I want necessarily, so I don't think we'll do that one. But it lets you go through and preview the music and find a theme that fits what you're trying to do. This is something you can take a little time to explore and see what all's there. And try to find the track that fits what you're trying to do. So we're going to take a look at this and pick a piece of music. Okay, so after taking a few minutes of looking through the songs, I found one here that I think I like. Now the nice thing about this is the fact that I can go down here and I have different cuts available of this song, different lengths. This music package was made specifically for video production, so you've got several versions of the same song, and then within that you have different length versions of the same song. So in this case I'm wanting about a 15-second cut to fill that gap at the beginning of my film. So I come down here, and that's the cut we are listening to right now. And go back here to the beginning of it. Now that song sounds pretty good the way it is. So I'm going to probably just export it exactly like it is and use it just as a stereo export. Now, if I want to get really fancy with it, I can actually customize the song, because in this case, all the instruments are on different soundtracks, and you can mix and match them. So if you're into audio and want to play with that, that's an option for you too. You can import this into the video editor into several soundtracks, and then you can go in and tweak it however you want it to sound. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and export this. I'm going to come over here to Settings, and it says I got to add something to the batch list. So I'm going to add this to the batch list. And I'll check my settings as far as how I want to output this, and I'm going to put this out in stereo. 16-bit, 44.1K, that's the standard default setting, and include all the layers. So that will give me all the stuff that I want. I'm going to come down here to output location, and I'm going to click here and go browse. And again, we don't want anything on the network because the editing software can't work with it on the network, and it will just plug up our servers. So going down here, video projects, and go into that. Whoops, clicked on the wrong thing there. Do that again. Go into Computer, Video Projects, Drive D, and Administrator 2 is where I want to go. So I'm going to say put it in there. Output location, I'm going to double check it, make sure it's putting it where I want it to be. And with that, it's ready to go. And I'm going to come down here and say Render Selected. And it's going to output my file for me. And when I do that, it opens it up. It shows me that it's put it there as a WAV file, so it's ready for me to import back into the editing software. So I can close Juicer. And I don't need to save the batch list because I've already rendered that out. Go back into Premiere. Back into my project. File, import, and back out to Administrator 2, and there's my music. Setting the pace version B, it says. So I'm going to open that one. And it's a stereo track, and since we have already used track 1 for part of our audio, we're going to put this on track 2, which is also a stereo track. And we'll do that. Drop that in there like so. And let's see what it looks like. Okay, now our track is just a little bit short of what our video is there, so we're going to trim our clips here to fit the length of the music, and that'll give us a nice opening track there. Okay, we've trimmed that up a little bit. Let's take a look and see how it came out.
If you're watching this video, you've probably just been an assignment from your teacher to record a video report for your...
There you go. So that's how it came out. Let's take a look here. Our audio and the music's just a little loud. So what we're going to do is bring up the audio mixer here, which is a tab up here at the top of the screen. And our music is on audio number 2. So we're going to come over here, and I'm going to change audio 2 from read mode to latch mode. Latch mode will make it behave basically like a physical audio mixer. You have your various sliders here for your different tracks, so that you can adjust your levels just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the audio level on track 2 down just a little. And let's see what it sounds like now.
If you're watching this video, you've probably just been an assignment from your teacher.
Levels sound pretty even right there. That's not bad. I think maybe that's the way we're going to leave that. So I think we've got our opening done.
Before we get started, we've got a couple of ground.
So that shows you how to use Juicer and create your audio tracks that you want. And again, take some time and explore that library because there's a lot of music in there. That's why it is that we have told you not to import any copyrighted music into it, because with the music library we have there, we own that music, which means anything you make here, you can, if you burn a DVD and you want to sell it, if you're doing something for a club here at the school and you want to put together a highlight video and put titles and graphics and music on it and be able to sell it, we own all this stuff. We have rights to sell it. We don't have any copyright issues. So keep that in the back of your mind. This might be a good fundraiser for something. So we'll move on to the next step now. Okay, now that we've finished our video, we've come out to the end and we've put another bit of black on the end of it and made a nice little fade to black at the end, just like what we did at the beginning. You can always add titles to the end of it if you want to, closing credits, music, any of that type of stuff, using basically the same techniques we've seen on those opening credits. Now what we're going to do is we're going to save it one more time to make sure we've got it. Now we're going to go up here and we're going to export this. Go export media, and it'll open up a box here to show that we've got the whole project's been selected. And we're going to come over here and we've got a variety of different types of video we can pick from here, depending on whether we want to put it out as a H.264 for Blu-ray. That's what we would use if we made a Blu-ray disc. We're going to go MPEG-2 DVD because that's what we want in this case. We've got an MPEG-4 option there if you're doing something for something that uses MPEG-4. We've got Windows Media File option. You can put out a Windows Media File to play back on the computer. In our case, we're going to put out an MPEG-2 for DVD. And our output name, we're going to edit that, because we don't want it going in Administrator. We want to change that directory. We're going to come back up to Video Projects and we're going to put it in Administrator 2. Administrator was the last one to use this project. We're also going to change the default name. We don't want to call it Sequence 1. We're going to rename this as Orientation. And it's going to put this out as a .m2v file, which is an MPEG-2 video file that's ready for importing into a DVD type project. So we'll save that. We're going to come down here and check our audio settings. We're going to change from the default PCM format to Dolby Digital. And we have an option here for either the Dolby Digital codec or Surcode for Dolby Digital. And Surcode is an optional add-on for this that gives you the full surround sound. It costs about $300, and we did not include that on this machine at this time. So you'll want to use the regular Dolby Digital. That'll give you stereo DVD. It'll play back on your DVD player at home with no problem at all. And instead of going export down here, we're going to go to Q, which is the button that's highlighted. And we're going to wait a minute, and it's going to open the Adobe Media Encoder program. And once that opens, it will import our project into Adobe Media Encoder. The reason we're doing this is because with the number of people here trying to make projects, we don't want to tie up the system during the day with sitting here and rendering somebody's video. That would pose a problem because that would lessen the amount of time available for students to be able to access this machine. So what we're doing instead is we're going to put this into Media Encoder, which builds a list of various programs, or videos I should say, waiting to be output. And at the end of the day, somebody from the library will come in and start this rendering process, and it will sit here and run overnight and render everybody's videos so that they're ready for them the next day. As we see here, we've got a few other videos here on the list that are waiting to be ran. And like I say, once everyone's files are in there, the librarian would just come up here and hit the play button right there and start the queue, and it would sit here and run and render the videos out so that they're ready to go. So that completes the work for the first day. We'll come back on the second day and we'll import the completed file that we've rendered into the Adobe Encore, it's called, which is the product that is used for making the actual DVD. Now, if we were to output this as a Windows Media file, obviously we're not making a DVD. That step we would skip. But this part is the same for whatever format you use. So that concludes day one of our little project. Okay, this is day number 2 of our project. We let the video render overnight last night, and this morning we're going to start working on creating the DVD based on the file we just created last night. So we're going to go in and we're going to open up Adobe Encore. So we go to All Programs, and Adobe Production Premium CS5, and Adobe Encore. Encore is our program we use to create the actual DVD and the menus that go with it. And we're going to come in here and say New Project. And this one is going to be the orientation. And once again, we're going to go in here and go Browse. We don't want it in our User My Documents folder because it'll gum up the works. So we come up here and go Computer, Video Projects, and Administrator. We've got to be sure and keep all our stuff in our own folder that way. Now, in Adobe Encore, you have 2 possible things that you can do. You can either do a Blu-ray or DVD, and that's selected here at the very beginning. We're going to select a DVD, and NTSC is the correct television standard for North America, so that's what you're going to want to choose. PAL is a European standard that would be used overseas in some places, and we do not want that because it's not compatible with our video that we're using. So we've got that. We're going to double check our Advanced tab. Everything looks good there. Nothing there we need to worry about, so we're clicking OK. And that brings up the basic startup menu for Adobe Encore. Now what we're going to start out doing is we're going to come up here to File, and we're going to import as, and there's a number of selections here. The first thing we're going to import is our video file, and we import that as a timeline. What that does is that file will serve as our master reference, so to speak, for the disk to tell it what the length of the disk is supposed to be. We go to Computer, Video Projects, our folder, and we're going to get our video that we output here earlier. We've got Orientation 1, which is the one we just put out. You'll notice we've got 2 folders here. One of them will say Movie Clip. The other one will say AC3 Audio. The video and audio are in separate files at this point. So we're going to import the movie clip, and we're importing that again as a timeline so that it uses that as our reference for timing. And that'll take a minute here for it to import. Okay, and that's our video that's been imported. Now we're going to come back here and we're going to do import as asset, which is what you do for any non-timeline thing. And we're going to come down here and pick that AC3 audio. AC3 is the technical name for Dolby Digital. So it means basically the same thing. It's just that consumers know it as Dolby Digital because Dolby makes it. AC3 is the actual technical name for it. And we're going to come up here and take that audio file and drag it down here to the audio channel on our timeline. So that gets our audio and video into the timeline. We can go in at this point and we can go through our video. We can add chapters if we want to. Let's say I wanted to add a chapter right there. I can find where I want to start that at. I can scan through it here, figure out where I want my chapter to be. Maybe I want to put a chapter right there. If so, I can go over here to the add chapter, which is the little pointer thingy. And that puts a chapter marker on the timeline. Do that for however many chapters you want to put in there. We'll drop another one in here just to say we've got it. Now in practice, what you want to do is if you were making a really long program and you want to divide it into chapters, you would have some definite time points where you'll want to do that and drop your chapter markers in. In this case, we're just putting them in there to show how they work. Okay, so we've got our 3 chapters in there. We can go in and change the names of them if we want to. We can go in, if I click on the chapter marker at the very beginning, default name is chapter 1. If I want to change the name of that, I can rename that to opening credits. I can go to chapter 2, I can rename that and call that, well, let's see, we'll call that getting started. And chapter 3, we'll call that the big finish. Okay, so I've got those in there. Now our next step is we're going to build our menu. So we'll take a look down here at the list. There's a whole bunch of them in here, and you can kind of explore all the different menu themes that are on this menu theme down in the corner. I usually go with, find it here, there's a classic, I believe, in here. Maybe looking at the wrong thing. Let me click over here a minute. Well, it depends. I don't see the classic one in here that I'm used to seeing. I use a little bit older version. It's got slightly different group of menus. So we'll pick a different one here. Let's take a look at what's element. That might work. We'll go ahead and go with that. The colors match up nicely with what we've got for backgrounds. So we're going to find, let's see, that's element. Yeah, we'll go with that. So I'm going to take the element menu, I'm going to drag it up here to my list of stuff that I've got in here. The element submenu, I want to grab one of those also. Likewise, I'll drag it up to here and put it in the menu. Okay, so we've got those picked out. Basically what we do now is we're going to go in here to scene 1 and click on it, and I'm going to come over here to the checkboxes and I'm going to say set name from link, and up here you'll see a little box that says link and it says not set. When I click on that arrow, it's going to give me a menu, and I'm going to come down here to my video orientation 1 and I'm going to say okay, my first one is going to be opening credits. And it's going to import a still picture from the opening credits, and it's going to change the name from scene 1 to opening credits. Do the same thing with scene 2. Again, come down here to orientation. In this case, I'm going to make that one getting started. and I forgot to check that box, so I'll go over here and check the box, and it'll change my title for me. Click on the next one. Again, set name from link, and then go up to the link, come down to orientation, and that'll be the big finish. Now, we only made 3 chapters in our video, but we've got 6 chapter markers here, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and right click that, and we're going to clear that. Same with this one. You can remove any of the unused ones that way. So now I've got my 3 chapters there and my menu up here. Next thing I'm going to do is main menu, which is another chapter item. And again, we're going to come over here to link. This time I didn't say set name from link. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go down here to the menu that says element menu. Click default. So that'll take us back to the main menu every time we go to that. So that's that menu. Now if we go to the orientation, let's see, we want the element sub, we got element sub menu, we want element menu actually, I guess. Lost my train of thought there for a minute. Double click that so we can bring that up. And we're going to click on the volume 1, and we're going to change that. We're going to say play movie. And we're going to come down here to the link and go to that orientation 1 video and go to opening credits. And go to the next one, and we're going to change volume 2 to chapters, or actually let's make it chapter selection. And come down here, and we're going to have that pull up that sub menu, and it's going to pull up default. And volume 3, again, we're not using it, so we're going to clear that one. Volume 4, clear that one. And we're going back over to submenu, because we got a couple of next buttons here to go between multiple submenus. And since we didn't put any in here, we're going to clear those out. So that's got all of those. Back to that. Everything looks good there. Now if we go to our flow chart, we're going to make a change. We have Untitled Project, which is the generic name for it. We're going to give this the name Orientation. And you'll see that it says First Play. And we're going to change that. Right now it wants to jump right into our video, which you can do that, but to make it look a little more professional, we're going to go to the menu first. So we're going to come down here to the default menu. And that changes our flow chart radically because that shows all of our other elements there. Now we got that there. We need to come up here to our orientation video and tell it what it's supposed to do at the end of the video. And we're going to tell it to go back to the chapter selection. Now let's go to submenu, which is our chapter selection menu, and we'll say default. So that puts us back to our main menu then at the end of the movie. And it looks like everything's ready to go there. So we'll come over here. We've got our menus there, we've got our timelines, we go to build, and we've got DVD disk. It's showing us down here how much of our disk is going to be filled by our video, so we've got plenty of room. That shouldn't be an issue. We're going to come up here and go check project, and we're going to click start. And if everything's the way it should be, you'll get no errors in this list, and you'll see a thing down here that says no items found. So that means we're good to go. At this point, I'm going to save my project. And now I'm ready to render a disk. So all I have to do is go build. It will open the DVD drawer and ask me to insert a DVD disc. And so all I do is put my disc in there and click OK, and we're burning a disc.